eliminate the work at height. For example, if I want to do painting work at height on the building, what I will do, I will just design a long pole so that a worker can stand from the ground and do the painting activity. So in this example, we have eliminated the work at high risk and hazard by our changing the work approach and changing the work scope. Secondly, it's substitution. In substitution, we substitute the hazardous material with the less hazardous material or with the non-hazardous material. For example, if we are using any kind of chemical which is very much hazardous, what we will do, we will substitute that chemical with the same properties with the one that is less hazardous. Third one is engineering controls. So what are engineering controls? Engineering controls include isolation, total enclosure, separation, segregation, partial enclosure, and safety devices. Now I am going to give you an example of engineering controls from our daily life. For example, if you are using any kind of car or vehicle, while you are reversing that car or vehicle, you have installed any kind of movement sensor at the back of the car. This is your engineering control. What that engineering controls is doing, where that engineering control will prevent the human and vehicle collision. So this is one of the example of engineering control. Another example of engineering control is, for example, if you are doing work on any kind of machinery and that machinery have rotating parts. So what you will do, you will install a guard on that rotating parts. So there will be no interaction of human and machine, so there will be no any kind of incident or any kind of risk or hazard developed from that machine. So these are basically the examples of engineering controls. Now we will move forward to our administrative controls. Administrative controls include your permit to work system, your safe system of work, and any other techniques which relates to procedures and the system. These all are your administrative control. At the last, there is PP. PP is the last line of defense. Many companies just focus on engineering control, administrative control. They will not go to the PPs. PPs are the last line of defense. If your engineering control fails and if your administrative control fails, PP will save your employee and your worker from any kind of incident or accident. Moving on, there are some safety signages which you can see on your screen. We will discuss these safety signages in detail. So the first signages which you are seeing is the prohibition. Prohibition sign means, for example, there is an area which is prohibited and authorized to only authorized personnel. So you will see that prohibition signage is there. The second one is warning signs, which is mainly used in any kind of chemical or for hazardous material. The third sign is mandatory. It means that anything that is necessary or mandatory. For example, in this sign you can see that the shoes can be seen in this sign. So it means that the safety shoes are must and mandatory in any kind of specific or certain area. Another sign which you can see on the screen is that the safe condition sign. It shows the emergency exit in any kind of building or premises. Moving on to the next one, it is the fire equipment. It identifies or it shows you that this is a fire equipment. For example, the fire equipment can be fire extinguisher, fire hose, reel, or any kind of other fire measurements, for example, fire blanket. So basically, you will see different kind of safety signs when you go into the industry or in any kind of plant. These are also the method of graphical communication to convey any kind of health and safety information to the employees. Moving on to our last step of hierarchy of control, which is PPE. PPEs are basically called personal protective equipment. As I gave you the examples earlier, that what are the personal protective equipment. For example, if we are wearing a helmet, a safety helmet on construction site, that is our PPE, which is protecting us. For example, if we are wearing safety shoes, that is also our PPE. If we are wearing any kind of cut resistant gloves or any kind of leather gloves while doing any kind of work activity, that is also our PPE, which will protect us. There are different types of PPE that are specific to any kind of job or activity. PPE must comply with all the standards. There are set of standards for each kind of PPE. The employees should use their PPE in a safe manner. The employees should not tamper their PPEs and they must use them in a safe manner to safely execute their activity. Employees must clean their PPEs regularly and inspect their PPEs before doing each kind of activity, as their inspection is important to each of us, because you know that PPE is the last line of defense. It is the last step of hierarchy of control. If this step fails, then we can't prevent any incident or accident from occurring. Now we will discuss the merits and disadvantages of PPEs in this. First, we will discuss the merits of PPEs. So the merits of PPEs are that they can be used as an interim control while more expensive or difficult controls are put in place. For example, if we have applied all the engineering controls and the administrative controls, still we will use PPEs as an additional control measure to prevent any accident or incident from happening. In some situation, it may be the only control option if available. For example, for any type of activity, if we fail to apply any type of engineering control and if we fail to apply any type of administrative control, so the last option left for us is to use PPEs, the personal protective equipment. So in those scenarios, PP is the only step which can help us to prevent any kind of incident or injury. The third merit of PPEs are it may be needed as a backup for emergencies when other controls have failed. As we discussed earlier, that if your engineering control, administrative control and all other control fails, PP will be the still only one available option that can be used to prevent any kind of incident or accident occurring. The last it is usually cheap. Some PPs are usually cheap, but some are expensive. Not all PPs are cheap. Some are usually expensive and some are cheap. And the last merit of PP is it gives immediate protection. PPs give you immediate protection from any kind of hazard, from any kind of incident while occurring. So it will protect you at all cost. Now we will discuss the limitations and disadvantages of PPEs. So what are the limitations and disadvantages of PPEs? It only protects one person, the wearer. For example, if I am wearing the safety helmet and the other worker is not wearing the safety helmet, then it means that PP will only protect me. My safety helmet will only protect me, not the other worker. The second limitation of PP is it may not protect adequately if it not fitted correctly. For example, if I am wearing my safety helmet without the chin strap and without not fully tightened and it is somehow loose, then it will not protect me from any kind of incident or from any kind of hazard. So the third limitation of PP is it may not be comfortable and may interfere with the wearer's ability to do the job. For example, if you are wearing multiple PPs, you will feel irritated, you will not feel comfortable, and that is also one of the limitations of wearing PPs. It may increase overall risk by impairing the senses. Goggle that messed up. For example, if you are wearing safety goggles and in some condition it will mess up and it will just lessen your ability to see. So in that case, the PP will become risk and hazard. Although in the market now the mist-free also goggles are available in the market, so we can use that one. But in some condition where these type of PPs are used, for example, if you are using a safety goggle and it messed up, so it will become a hazard itself, the PPE. Now we will go on to the next limitation of PPE. It may increase overall risk by impairing the senses. We have discussed that. The next one is it may not be compatible with the other items that have to be worn or used. As I told you earlier, so the next limitation of PP is that it may not be compatible with other items that have to be worn or used. As we have discussed earlier, if you are wearing multiple PPs, for example, if I am wearing the safety goggles and along with that the safety mask and the safety plugs or any kind of ear plugs, what will happen? I will become irritated, I will become uncomfortable, and for especially whenever there is a hot temperature, I will become more uncomfortable. So that is the limitation of PPs. The other limitation is people don't like wearing PPs. As I mentioned the previous reason, because of that all reasons people don't like wearing PPEs. So the last limitation of wearing PPE is that if it fails to danger. The worker is exposed to risk. As I told you earlier that the PP is our last line of defense, and if that defense fails, no one can protect us from any kind of risk, hazard or from any incident or accident from happening. Moving forward towards the use of guidance and legal requirements for developing risk assessment, what will need to cater. Now we will discuss what will need to cater while we are developing risk assessment. So we will use risk assessment for internal risk level that require action within set time scale. But if the legal requirement says that even the risk that is low, which is to be concluded include it in your internal risk assessment. If that risk is low but the law requires it, then it must be done. Then it should be done and you should comply with that risk level even if it is low. Now we will discuss residual, acceptable and tolerable risk in detail. So what is residual risk, acceptable risk, tolerable risk and unacceptable risk? Residual risk is basically when all precautions and all controls are being applied and still there is some kind of risk remain left. So this is called residual risk. And the acceptable risk has been reduced to an adequate level. And what is the tolerable risk? Not acceptable, but we can live with it for a short period of time with interim control, but with the passage of time we still need to reduce that tolerable risk too. In the end, it is unacceptable risk. Unacceptable risk means the risk is too high that we cannot take any type of chances or any kind of other thing so that we can do that activity. We need to reduce that risk at all cost. Then we can commence that activity or particular job. The step 4 of risk assessment is to record significant findings and implement it. So what are the typical content that we can record? These are the activity or area assessed and hazards, group at risk, risk and adequacy of existing control measures, further precautions needed for the residual risk, date and name of competent person who is carrying out the risk assessment, and at the end of the risk assessment we need to put the review date, because the review of risk assessment is very much important. If we do not review our risk assessment will not be up to date with the current risk level of an organization, and we cannot prevent any type of incident or accident from occurring at our organization. Moving on to the step 5, which is review of the risk assessment. Why we need to review the risk assessment and how we can review the risk assessment. Let's discuss it. So we need to review the risk assessment if there are significant changes in our processes, substances, equipment, or in the workplace or environment, or there are significant changes in our personnel. For example, if their job changes or their job scope changes, the risk assessment becomes no longer valid if any kind of accident or incident happened at your workplace. If any kind of incident or accident occurred at your workplace, you need to reconstruct the risk assessment and you need to update it with the current risk level of the organization. At the end, the risk level need to be periodically reviewed. As during the regular reviews, the risk assessment need to be periodically reviewed to keep it updated with the current risk level of an organization. Most organizations review their risk assessment after 1 year, but it depends upon the situation. For example, if before 1 year, if any incident or accident occur, you should need to be review the risk assessment. And if any other changes occur in your technology process, in any kind of job change, then you need to review your risk assessment and update your risk assessment before 1 year. As we discussed earlier that there are some special cases and vulnerable workers. What are these vulnerable workers? These are young persons, expectant mothers, disabled workers and lone workers. Why these are called special cases and vulnerable workers? We will discuss each of them in detail. First of all, let us just start with young workers. So young workers are those which are under 18. They have lack of experience, they have poor risk perception, they are influenced by their peer group, they do not possess physical and mental majority, they are very eager to do any kind of task without taking any kind of precaution or safety measures. So that's why the young persons are vulnerable and special cases. Moving on to the next category, which is expectant mothers. So now we will discuss why expectant mothers are vulnerable and special cases. As expectant mothers are expecting their baby, so they can't do any kind of manual handling, they can't do work in extreme temperature, they cannot be exposed to whole body vibration and to any kind of ionizing radiation. It will affect their condition, and they also cannot work in night shift, and they also cannot pose to any kind of stress and violence. That's why the expectant mothers come under the category of vulnerable workers and special cases. Moving on to the next category, which is disabled worker. Disabled workers are those which have eye impairment, they cannot listen properly, they cannot walk properly because of their injury in their leg, or they have any kind of impairment in their five senses. So what we need to do reasonable adjustment for the disabled workers at our workplace. For the disabled worker, they can't even evacuate safely in any kind of emergency, so we need to support them. We need to give an extra resource or extra support to them in case of any kind of emergency evacuation. In the end, the category is lone workers. Lone workers are those which are working independently without any kind of in a group. They are working independently at site, at plants, and in different locations. So they are more posed to a risk and hazard associated with the job, because they have no one with their alongside them who can rescue them or who can report any type of incident or accident or injury related to them. So that's why they are more posed to risk and hazards associated with the lone working. Towards the impact